Support for First Coast Connect is provided in part by Baptist Health and North Florida TPO.
Opinions expressed on the First Coast Connect Week in Review are those of our panelists and do not reflect the views of WJCT News 89.9.
Good morning. I'm Noah Hertz, and it's Friday. That means it's time for our First Coast Week in Review. Among our topics this morning, Jacksonville's DOGE committee continues to scrutinize the city's telehealth contractor. The city's urban core is seeing a rise in residents, though downtown Jax lags behind the other Florida cities. JSO is pushing back against online claims about a serial killer in the area. A Florida legislator is under scrutiny for allegedly diverting FEMA money for personal and campaign purposes, and the House Ethics Panel has revived its probe into embattled Representative Cory Mills. Talk about all that and more. I'm joined this morning by Mike Mendenhall, City Hall reporter and associate editor at Jacksonville Today. Good morning, Mike.
Good morning, Noah.
Randy DeFoor, former Jacksonville City Council member. Good morning.
Good morning, Noah.
Frank Powers joining us by phone, the former assignment manager in News for Jax. Can you hear us, Frank?
Yes, I can. Good morning from the WJCT Managers Bureau.
Good morning, Frank. Good to have you. And last but not least, Dan Scanlon, reporter here at WJCT News.
Morning, Noah.
Good morning. So I want to start this morning with the ongoing investigation into Jacksonville's telehealth provider and some allegations of fraud and misconduct there. Mike, you've been reporting on this week. City of Jacksonville's Department of Government Efficiency Committee is continuing to look into various city initiatives. What did the DOGE committee do this week?
Well, essentially, first of all, these allegations were brought by one member in particular of the DOGE committee, Councilmember Rory Diamond, who represents the beaches. These claims were from anonymous phone tips that from folks that he still has not yet to disclose their identities. But essentially, what they're saying a few different things. First, Diamond's raised concerns about some crossover leadership, but on Telescope Health, which is the city's telehealth program's primary operator, and Emergency Resource Group. Emergency Resource Group is the staffing agency for Baptist Health's ER. And as well as JFRD's medical director, who works as a contractor in Baptist Health ER through that staffing agency. Basically, and it's important to note that there have been no specific allegations of illegality made at this point, but he's just calling that, basically saying it's weird. It's weird that there's that crossover. The other thing that the committee and Diamond have alleged is possible Medicare and Medicaid fraud, which is a pretty serious allegation from Telescope through the telehealth program, basically calling into question whether or not a Telescope or is directing their patients through the telehealth program to specific ERs. Again, no evidence that has been presented publicly that actually shows that. There's also a second telehealth operator in the city of Jacksonville that works through Jacksonville's 911 service called RightSight Health. RightSight has a different model from Telescope. RightSight takes both uninsured and insured patients that have Medicare and Medicaid, and essentially they make their profit by balancing that out, saying we'll take on some uninsured folks. But when you call 911, if the 911 operator determines that this isn't an emergency situation, they'll send you to RightSight and they will get you the care you need.
Gotcha.
And so that's essentially the allegations that have been made. Telescope says, look, these are false. All of these allegations are false. We've done nothing wrong. The thought that we're directing people to different ERs is completely antithetical to what we actually are doing here, which is we're supposed to be diverting people from the ER, and that's what we're doing. And they said it's been pretty successful. They've said that there's about $11.1 million in savings from area emergency rooms that have benefited from keeping these folks that don't have an emergency situation but don't have insurance and who couldn't get care otherwise.
Yeah, this is what I wanted to ask, because we're talking specifically about the HealthLink Jax program, this telehealth program that was launched by the city in coordination with this contractor Telescope Health last year. I mean, you talked a little bit about it, but how does this program work, and what has the mayor's office said about whether it's been successful, how it's working?
Well, from what the mayor's office and from what Telescope has said and the statistics they provided, it has been successful. They said over 6,000 patients have been diverted from area ERs who don't actually have emergency needs. That the contract actually started in 2024. It was
Mhm.
approved. It was approved by City Council, funded by City Council, so that and it's about a $2.3 million contract to start. Telescope actually, the telehealth program actually kind of became a point of contention a little bit in the budget process as well. During the city budget process, some of the city council members, and several of which, including Councilmember Ron Salem, are on the DOGE committee,
Mhm.
and we tried to completely defund the program and say, look, we don't need this program. It's not a financial benefit to the city. It's just benefiting these hospitals. So they tried to pull back on it and really double down on funding UF Health, which is the city's indigent care
Gotcha.
operator.
Gotcha. Randy, I know you've been following all of this pretty closely here. This whole notion of the city having its own Department of Governmental Efficiency or DOGE committee is pretty interesting to me too. And I know that at the federal level,
Yes.
a lot of those efforts have slowed down. But when the DOGE committee at the federal level was really operating in full swing, it was kind of both criticized and celebrated for a very slash and burn approach to closing operating offices and firing people. How does the city's DOGE committee work compared to how it was operating at the federal level?
Well, I don't think it's operating at the same capacity. I
Mhm.
mean, at the federal level, you had large departments that were closed. Here, they're just looking line item, excuse me, line item by line item.
Mhm.
But in this case, first of all, Mike, great job reporting on this. Great. I mean,
Thank you.
I've been following your articles, and it's just so interesting. A couple of things that he did not mention, then, if it's okay, I'd like to mention.
Please, please.
On the right side health, what's interesting to that is that that organization or that institution that is being represented by Jordan Ellsbury
Mhm.
and Lenny Curry by their company.
Former Mayor Lenny Curry.
Correct.
Yeah.
And so I think there's a little bit of I think that they're trying to push out Telescope and bring in Right Side Health. That's really, I think, what the ultimate goal here is, in
Hmm.
my opinion. The other thing I think is very interesting on the Telescope Health that Mike reported on was that Ron Salem, a couple years ago, or maybe it was last year, Mike,
2023.
2023, tried to get Telescope Health to hire his LLC. So I can see a little grudge going on there with
Mhm.
Telescope Health, maybe from the Ron Salem. And then, of course, I think a head nod towards Lenny Curry and Jordan Ellsbury from Roy Diamond. I think that's probably what we're actually witnessing.
Well, let's not forget that Ron Salem, that LLC, is a pharmaceutical supply program. So you'd think that he has some awareness of how insurance works, how health insurance works, how
Mhm.
referrals work, how doctor's office works. He's been doing it for years. So what's his opinion, Mike, when it comes to the DOGE effort of Diamond? Is he? I thought I got the impression he was not as intense on what Rory Diamond was pushing for.
Well, Salem's he's letting Diamond lead the charge here. I mean, Ron Salem was pretty critical. He was one of the people that during the budget hearing that actually led the effort to end the telehealth programs, to stop funding the telehealth program, and his opinion was, well, because this is benefiting hospitals, they should be paying for it, not the taxpayers. That was his position. Eventually, the city council, after stripping that money, they put about $1.5 million back in to fund the telehealth program.
Hmm.
There's still a little bit of a gap there that the Deacon administration says they're going to work with council to try to fully fund it before the end of the year. So that was kind of Salem's position. But in the end, the majority of the council won out and kept the program.
I love the fact that in one story I read, Dr. Joseph Yossi, our city's emergency health official, says, if they just come to us and talk to us, at a table,
Right.
we could have avoided all of this and answered some questions. And now apparently we've got till December 3rd, I guess, to get some
Yeah.
response.
Yeah, that's one more thing, Noah, if I can
Please,
add.
please.
Yeah, so one of the things that the DOGE committee did this week was they are requesting documentation, communications from Telescope Health, from the administration, from the Jacksonville Fire and Rescue Department,
Mhm.
as well as Right Side Health and other entities that are involved in this whole situation. It's not they're not being compelled by a subpoena at this point, right?
Gotcha.
Yeah, right now
Gotcha.
it's all been voluntary. Telescope and the administration says, yeah, we're going to fully comply. We've got nothing to hide. We're going to fully comply with this. But there is a bit of a there is a bit of kind of hinting behind the scenes. Council President Kevin Carrico has said, look, I'm not going to give subpoena power to this investigation yet, but I'm going to reserve the right to do it if if I feel the need. So there is some additional political pressure just being kind of lightly touched behind the scenes.
But didn't excuse me, didn't you mention that the Inspector General has reviewed this?
So the Inspector General actually reviewed the process that selected Telescope Health. So Telescope Health was selected as in a bidding process and in a standard request for proposals process. They bid on to operate the city's telehealth program. They went up against two other companies, and they were the highest scoring company. The IG's office, the Inspector General's office, looked at this and said they actually looked at all of the submissions. They scored it themselves as if they would have been the scoring committee with and they determined that no, this was scored properly. We would have selected Telescope 2, then saw no impropriety.
I want to go ahead and we have a caller here, Roselle from Avondale, talking about this topic. Roselle, can you hear us?
Yes. Can you hear me?
We can hear you just fine. What's going on?
Thank you for taking my call. I just have to say, Roy Diamond seems to see grift everywhere, and I understand why he would. He's a pro in my book, but I think these guys have a lot of work to do on city council, and they're doing a lot of performative things. And people are hungry, rent is an issue, living, housing, and they're talking about, anything but the big things, renaming roads and all this. And, we're pretty tired of it, and we're pretty tired of his, grandstanding. It's a waste of time, and he's wasting our time. And he sees it everywhere, and he's a pro, so he would know. That's what I've got to say.
Thank you for your call.
You see the irony of what's going on here, right?
Yeah, I wanted to ask you, Frank, I mean, can you talk a little bit about just the public perception of all of this?
Well, Rory Diamond is now questioning Telescope's claim that it saved $11 million to the city by diverting people from unnecessary emergency room visits, saying, where's the evidence? But he persists in his allegations without evidence of fraud and conflict of interest. That list of communications that he's demanded be presented by December 3rd goes back to January of 2023. This is what is commonly called a fishing expedition. The meeting this week, why not just float out a couple specific allegations, whet the public's appetite for and to support his claim that there's fraud out there. And these tipsters that supposedly only have contacted him, why haven't they contacted media outlets to make those same allegations requesting anonymity? Sometimes it's what you don't see,
Yeah, I mean, I wanted to ask too, just because as far as the public perception of the city's DOGE committee goes, Mike, I know you reported that one of the former supporter of the committee has now kind of started to turn on it, huh?
Yeah, so Matt Carlucci, who he's I don't know for sure if he was actually a supporter or not, but he kind of just kind of let the Doge committee go to see what it did. But he came out pretty strongly this week against it. He made a speech at one of the city council committee meetings, and he told us here at Jacksonville Today that look, the Doge committee has, in his view, has become a political tool. It's basically become a political attack dog for some of these council members who he notes are likely seeking higher or different office. So that's his viewpoint. He thinks it's a vehicle for the city council to take political attacks against Mayor Deegan and the Deegan administration. This telehealth program has been touted by the Deegan administration as a real accomplishment for them. They're like, look, we came in and we provided a service for the uninsured in Jacksonville, that really fell into that gap, that can't get Medicare and Medicaid, but still can't afford things like the Affordable Care Act. They noted that, look, with the subsidies of the Affordable Care Act, getting ready to expire, Medicare or Medicaid here in Florida, being scaled back because of the big beautiful bill, we're going to need services like this more and more. And so that's that's their argument, and Matt Carlucci, really kind of encapsulated that in his criticisms of the DOGE committee.
If you're just joining us, we're talking this morning to Mike Mendenhall, Randy DeFoor, Frank Powers, and Dan Scanlon about the week's news. You can join the conversation by calling 904-549-2937 or by going to firstcoastconnect.org to find all the different ways to contact us. We have another caller here. This is Stephen from the Beaches. Go on ahead, Stephen.
Yes, I was just going to comment as soon as I heard about this effort against telehealth, you just hear the names: Rory Diamond, Ron Salem, Carrico. These are the far right of the city council, and they're all positioning, or at least some of them positioning themselves not only for their own gain, but for maybe a position as with Right Health with the Curry administration. This is just pure politics, as far as I can tell, without any evidence. They're going through this whole process and costing a lot of money to these places to try to prove their innocence. And it's just that game again. It's the anti-Donna Deegan faction somehow trying to hurt this current administration.
Thank you for calling, Stephen. I know, Randy, that's kind of what you were getting at before
Right.
about the political factions here. Is there a sense that this committee, like Mike said, Matt Carlucci noted, is kind of specifically just targeting things that Mayor Donna Deegan has championed?
I do think that that's where it's landed. I think that they have used it as a political weapon, and quite frankly, that's a misuse of power.
Well, look, I think we're gonna move on from this topic and move on to keep the focus here in Jacksonville, but we're gonna move towards downtown. There was a new report out this week about the state of downtown Jacksonville. The Downtown Booster organization that kind of operates all of this says that downtown is really on the up and up. Like, things are just getting ready to pop off. Randy, if you don't mind me sticking with you, I mean,
Sure.
do you want to tell me, having been on the city council, I'm interested in your perspective of what stuck out in this report about the state of downtown.
Well, for me, several of those projects I actually voted on.
Mm-hmm.
So it just kind of tells you the lead time it takes to get some of these big projects going. I mean, the ones in Brooklyn I voted on, the ones on South Point I voted on, obviously the hotel, Shad's Hotel, Four Seasons I voted on, and I think it's really coming together. I mean, it when you drive down, as you know, we had to drive downtown to get here. It really is amazing how many cranes are in the air,
Yeah.
and the process that we're seeing. I also, in my past, used to do developments for Regency Centers, and Publix was one of our largest grocers that we would develop for. And to hear that a Publix is going downtown is huge, because Publix will not go anywhere unless there are enough rooftops. So that is if I could just, emphasize what a big deal that is. It shows you that people are coming to downtown, and we have made a significant amount of progress.
Yeah, Dan, I wanted to ask you, I mean, I know a big focus of this report is that there's a lot more people moving and living downtown. So there's going to be a lot more activity of people there. There's definitely a sense, it's just numbers wise, that Jacksonville downtown is really developing, really going for it. But I know we've been saying that for a while.
Everywhere you go, from the Prime Osborne, where UF is going to put its facility, all the way to literally almost where we are here at WJCT, you're seeing apartment block after apartment block, condos being built. The Rise Doro, bless its soul, burned to the ground and is now being moved in again, immediately moved
rising
in
from the ashes.
You know, I've got the long view here. I got 45 years as a journalist here, and the old saw used to be, we're 10 years away from 10 years away. To see cranes, as Randy said, to see the cranes on downtown, see the development in Brooklyn, to see what's happening around the Friendship Fountain, and the fountain itself is amazing, because I will tell you, there was a time when there was a shipyards project where there's basically grass, and it was killed. One of the reasons being, the JTA is not going to expand the Skyway Express to the stadium. Things came and went, ideas came and went. Heck, when the Landing came in the 80s, my gosh, that was the renaissance of downtown. And a hotel got built and an office building, and then nothing. And the Landing deteriorated. There was a warehouse where the Landing is, where that park is soon to open, a warehouse there were some seedy bars down there. I can remember literally in the 80s. It was not a place you hung out unless you had to go to the Wells Fargo Tower or whatever they call it. So literally, it's amazing to see this. And don't forget, you not only have what the cranes are building, but you have some new restaurants and bars, such as that stretch there where Decca is on East Bay Street. You have some new restaurants coming in.
Yeah.
Not as many. The primary thing that I think of is where there used to be a Starbucks, which then became Superfood, which then became Lily's there on the corner downtown, is gone again. So that's your transients happening there. But if we can get more restaurants so that you have that neighborhood feel like Five Points does, like Riverside does, I think the residents will have a reason to start moving in, and some businesses, and you'll have some cool, maybe small level offices built with their owners living upstairs like they used to in the 40s in some neighborhoods.
Frank, I want to get you in here too on the phone. I mean, I know
Sure.
you've got that. You have a perspective too from having covered this area for some time. Like Dan said, I know the city, people living here have been saying for decades now that Jacksonville is just about to blow up. It's so close. Is there a sense that that is maybe finally happening with all of the expansion of development downtown?
Yes, I think the joke was along lines Dan was saying, that we were a city of downtown rendering. And we were at the news conference, remember the Needle? They would show renderings and then nothing would happen. But it does seem that finally we are on the cusp of a golden era of development downtown. The DVI report, which comes out every year and a half, said that there are about 9,000 residents downtown, and they got 3,000 more housing units in the works. So steady growth seems to be what they're expecting. You've got the UF Graduate School that's going to be going in there, and that's going to be a huge economic impact with its Florida Semiconductor Institute, the Stadium of the Future, Pearl Square development with the Publix. My question is, when is the developers of the Laura Street Trio going to get going and add to this momentum?
That's a good question. I mean, Mike, do you have any idea of that?
So, kind of where my understanding of where this lands right now is the current owner of the Laura Street Trio basically is kind of in a holding pattern. Another group, Avant, has come in. Avant is a contractor that's doing a lot of work in that area of downtown, and they are currently in talks with an out of state buyer, is my understanding, to come in to try to buy that. A lot of this reporting is from our news partners at the Jacksonville Daily Record. A full disclosure there, and so that's kind of where that's sitting at. But that project, is absolutely, Frank is absolutely correct. Like, that project has had so many stops and starts. I'm sure Randy remembers on her time on council, you probably voted on a couple of these incentive deals that ended up not materializing into anything. But the whole plan from all along was to turn that into a mixed use project with hotel, apartments, ground floor retail. There was talk at one point of a bodega, which, as a downtown resident, I can assure you is very, very much needed in that area. So that's my understanding of where the trio stands now. So there's some possible progress, but the Downtown Investment Authority does see that property as kind of as an essential linchpin that needs to be redeveloped, because it's right in the heart of where all of this connects.
And City Hall must have some belief that something's happening here, because, as you may or may not know, we have a marine fire station that had a groundbreaking just a week ago. But as part of that, they're going to add a ground component with fire engines and rescue units. So there must be some belief that you need a little extra coverage in downtown. And then let's not forget, you just had the pretty much final public meetings for the Metro Park, which means in about a year, that property might start some phase of development. And then Shipyards West, which is going to be a rather nice multi-use park next to the USS Orlick, is also in its final design stage. So there's development on the city end just for some open park space to lure you down to the waterfront.
I want to talk, too, about some other elements in here that are maybe a little more embattled. I know one element of the report talks about the Neighborhood Autonomous Vehicle Innovation Program, the NAVI program, the autonomous buses that you see driving in downtown Jacksonville. There's also talk of a lot of office spaces, but I know that there's been reporting, especially from the Daily Record, that a lot of those office spaces are left empty. I'm interested, Mike, especially with Navi and how that fits into all this. We might be getting more people, there's more opportunities for people, but is there a sense that there is movement downtown? You know what I mean?
I mean, I think there's definitely a sense that there's movement downtown. I don't want to gravitate too far back to the DOGE committee, but they had that the Navi and the JTA's ultimate urban circulator autonomous vehicle program is one thing that they're looking into as far as they think there's too much cost involved. But the simple fact of the matter is that, you know, clearly JTA thinks that there is going to be a need for more mass transit downtown. That's why they're doing this Skyway conversion to turn it into this autonomous vehicle program. You know, I mean, if you look at it in terms of the commercial office space that you had referenced, it really, when you look at the report, I mean, part of what Jacksonville is experiencing is not super dissimilar to what other markets are experiencing. You've got, you know, post COVID, you really you're having a shift of a lot of people are working hybrid. So you're seeing vacancy rates. You know, you're seeing vacancy rates in most, you know, major Florida cities when it comes to commercial office space. Jacksonville does happen, according to the report, happens to be the highest of all the major metro areas. We're sitting at 25.7% vacancy according to this report, and the lease rates are also the cheapest of any of the major metropolitan areas, which I found kind of interesting. But if you really look at, you know, what the Downtown Investment Authority and the City Council has been focused on in the last 5 years, like that, it's mixed use residential, ground floor retail, and that's the kind of stuff that you're really starting to see pop up. So I mean, that you can see that that what is materializing has really been the focus, and riverfront parks, public amenities, those kind of things. So I mean, when with what the city has been involved in and what they've been incentivizing developers to build, those appear to be popping up.
You know, Navi's a nice idea, but with less than 100 people a day riding it, and it's limited use between basically Water Street and here. It's a nice thing. It's the first in the country. It needs the link to San Marco, where more residents can grab it to come downtown. It needs to be used on weekends and nights, some nights, so that you can get to events and park in a parking garage in San Marco. That, I think, is when it might actually start taking off, and maybe it becomes the model for the rest of the U.S. Right now, it's a novelty. It's in its infancy. I'd love to see it develop, but I do understand how many millions of dollars for that phase to get the Skyway tracks fixed and get it over to San Marco. I don't know.
I think it's $240 million.
It's tens of millions of dollars that they're still asking for amid investigations and accountability questions.
And you're going to need to convert the Skyway Express tracks with long, big ramps so those vehicles can get up and down. It's going to take real estate. There's already some complaints about the one-way streets that have been done downtown and the limited parking that is now resulting because of the way they've designed it. So I'm thinking there's going to have to be some mind shift for Navi. I'm a New York City kid. I took mass transit everywhere. I would love to be able to use mass transit in Jacksonville. I have literally, in 40 years here, never had a reason to take a bus except to go to a football game from one of the park and rides. It's the only time I've been on a bus, and that needs to change because I miss being a strap hanger, as we'd call the folks who'd hang on a subway and go someplace and know we'd get there.
Frank, you made your comment about Jacksonville being the city of renderings. We got an email from Mark who says, speaking of renderings, I think it'd be cool to have a renderings gallery at MoCA or the Commerce so people can harken back to the LERP and other ideas that have been drawn up for the city. That could be kind of interesting. If all these renderings have been drawn over the years, it could be interesting to know what we almost had.
Actually, Jim Piggott did that story a year or so before he left. We were talking about the same thing there, and he went into the archive section at Channel 4 and he brought out all the renderings, and he did a story. And this is after there was another issue with the Laura Street trio, unfortunately, and he said, oh, these are all the plans, and he just ran through in there. And then he went out to all the places where buildings had been torn down and said, and this is where we are now.
Wow.
Empty field, empty field, empty field, empty field.
Feeling a coffee table book.
Remember when the first Duval County Courthouse plan was dropped because it was too expensive? The following year at the Gingerbread House Extravaganza, one of the displays was a square of chocolate gingerbread and nothing else, like a dirt field, and the sign was Duval County Courthouse. They then built it, is more expensive, And unfortunately, the delay killed one of the best delis in town, Warman's, which was right across the street. They couldn't hang on any longer. And so it's still an empty lot. There's nothing being developed there.
Well, I think this is a time to celebrate. With Donna Deegan took a lot of the information. I was on the JEDC when John Payton was mayor, and it was that time that we realized we needed two-way streets because we were just highways through downtown. It's in order to make it more pedestrian friendly. And let's give her credit. I mean, she took that information and made it happen. Though it is, I agree, it's a little frustrating at this point.
Well, now we're going to have the outdoor dining, which does work nicely with the way they've redesigned those streets. So that could be a double plus.
Absolutely. The Civic Council has done some, reporting that Jacksonville will be the fastest growing city in the state of Florida by 11%.
Wow.
So it's going to beat out Tampa, Miami. So, I mean, it's coming. And what's happened in the past is that when you got new mayors, they were like that. They shelved those ideas because they wanted to do their own ideas. Again, Mayor Deegan has built on what was done before her. So I am thrilled with what I'm seeing downtown.
I want to change gears here to just another news story this week. I mean, in a matter of just 3 days, 3 women were found dead in Jacksonville, and more information has come out about that since last night. But despite some social media buzz, JSO had to come out and confirm or strongly deny the idea that there was a serial killer at large in Jacksonville. Frank, I'm wondering if you can tell us a little bit about all of this, these 3 people who were found dead.
It didn't used to be like this, that media outlets would get stampeded by stuff, lack of a better word, that was thrown on social media, but that's what happened.
Mm-hmm.
All these 3 women, unfortunately, are going to wind up being the victims of domestic violence. 1 arrest was made, as they referenced in your newscast at the top. That was the young lady down in behind a gym on Sunbeam Road. They arrested her ex-boyfriend, from what I understand, down in Texas.
Mm-hmm.
Ms. Felton, whose body was found under the bridge by the Ortega River, that's already listed as a murder on JSO's website. No arrest yet. But again, that's what I understand, going to be domestic. And then the woman yet identified in her 50s in a rooming house on West 14th Street. She also had some domestic issues. So nothing to connect any of this, but that doesn't stop people from speculating on social media, and then the TV stations went with it. I will tell you that the same thing is going on in Houston and in southern New England. In Houston, you've had a number of bodies who've been pulled from the bayous, and people are saying, oh, there's a serial killer at work. And police down there are saying, no, it's people who are getting impaired and falling into the water and don't know how to swim.
Jeez.
In southern New England, you've had 6 or 7 people turn up dead in southern Massachusetts, Rhode Island, Connecticut, and again, you have online speculation about a serial killer, and police again saying there's nothing to suggest any of these are connected or are even homicides. It's just the era we are in right now, and unfortunately, it speaks to a lack of trust.
Well, Frank, correct me if I'm wrong. I got 40 years of coverage in this area, and a lot of it was cop beat. I do not remember any serial murder issues in town, and the way JSO handles.
There was one in 2002, and we can talk about that.
Okay.
Paul DeRusso,
Yeah, Frank, I wanted to ask you about
But JSO would have, I would think, being so socially media cognizant these days, have sent out something saying we're looking for this because this person matches, whatever.
Right.
They're certainly not shy about telling you about the fact that there's been some serial burglars out there, that there's people who are hitting auto parts stores and they show a security camera. So I would think, and incidentally, the state attorney's office also did not issue a statement, but I think they realized there was nothing to talk about.
Frank, I'm curious. We had Tom write in. Tom says, with so many unsolved murders in the city, how could the Jacksonville Sheriff's Office possibly know whether or not there's a serial killer? I mean, you mentioned that there was a serial killer here in Jacksonville in 2002. What is an indication that these were just, I know you said these are separated domestic issues, but what was the distinction there from this prior incident where there was a serial killer?
Well, 2 of these women probably are going to have died from gunshot wounds, and I can tell you from experience, serial killers don't use guns. Why not? Makes too much noise. Back in 2002, and it wasn't a great time for JSO because after the first 3 young girls turned up dead, they knew for sure from the forensic evidence at the scene that the same guy was doing it. And again, the community was worried that there was a serial killer. The then chief of detectives held an impromptu briefing at the police memorial building saying, no, we have no evidence to believe that any of these killings are connected. When at the time, they not only knew they were connected because of what the crime scenes looked like, but they had a name, and that name started out with a taxi driver named D, and that turned out to be Paul DeRusso.
Wow.
2 more victims showed up, and then finally he was arrested. JSO subsequently defended its actions, saying, well, we didn't want to alarm the community then. Well, the community was already alarmed. And then a 6th victim was attributed to DeRusso. She was actually the first from 1999, Teresa Mack, and he was tried and convicted of the 6 murders here in Jacksonville. That was the only time he went to trial. He was convicted, got a death penalty, but it was overturned on appeal, and now he's serving life without. So they are out there. They're rare, but nowadays, anytime a few deaths happen at the same time, people are quick to say serial killer.
Well, Dan, I wanted to ask you too. I know since you said you've covered Jacksonville for a long time, I know there is definitely a sense that, oh my gosh, violent crime, but Jacksonville's rate of violent crime has decreased quite a bit from what it used to be. Didn't we used to be the murder capital of Florida?
Yes. In fact, 2016, 2017, 2018, the numbers were rising to 160, 170 such. We're still sitting, I think this is memory, maybe down around 70 some odd so far this year, which is a dramatic drop. That's still 70 plus people who should not have died.
Mm-hmm.
And it's tragic. And some of the stuff that I've had to report on in just the past year has been horrendous. But it is good news. That means that somehow the information channels at JSO are working. I mean, they found this suspect from the Mandarin murder in Texas and arrested them with the help of the marshal's office on Tuesday, I believe. So that means somebody said, hey, I saw him. I saw where he went.
Yeah.
And that means their confidential informants or whatever are working. So that's good news. The sheriff's office is always very quick to announce these things because literally as I was looking at this copy, these notes, comes the email last night of that arrest, and I wrote it up so that we had it on the air this morning. So it's there. The sad thing is one of these 3 victims actually used to hang out in my neighborhood as the girlfriend of somebody near me. So that's how close some of this gets.
Yeah.
So just,
wow.
You know, and it's tragic. I don't remember this person that well, but then again, but the fact that it's that close and that all of us, our lives are touched by this and all of this tragedy happens. 70 some odd murders is a nicer number than it was 10 years ago, but it's still horrible.
Yeah. I want to touch on one more topic here in our last couple of minutes. A couple of Florida representatives in Washington, D.C. have been in hot water this week and drawing lots of attention. The first one is Sheila Sherfulis McCormick, who represents part of South Florida. She was charged with allegedly misusing federal funds, federal emergency funds to support her own campaign. Randy, I wanted to ask you, having been a sitting politician, what has the response been like this? And what happens when somebody is accused or charged of something like this and they're a sitting politician?
Well, this one's pretty serious. I mean,
Yeah.
you can prove pretty quickly whether she did or she didn't use federal emergency funds, and you have to be so careful about your political finances.
Mm-hmm.
So to me, I think she's in trouble.
I know we were talking not just her, but there's also Representative Cory Mills,
Right.
who represents part of Central Florida, who there is a subcommittee that is looking into some alleged misdeeds of his too. Have we seen any kind of reaction from people about Mills as well, or
I think
anything
they're pretty
locally?
disgusted. I mean, I've
Yeah.
met him. It shows you when people get a little piece of power, they think that they're above the law. And then again, this is serious. Nancy Mace, who has a victim of sexual violence, tried to censor him because of his
Mhm.
misconduct.
Mhm.
And he was able to get. They did not vote to censor him. He was able to move that to the ethics. But again, I mean, these are our representatives, and if they behave this way, I think they should be removed.
Yeah, I know Mills has faced allegations of dating violence and sexual harassment against by an ex-girlfriend
Right.
who is a Columbia County native.
Two
I
women
want
have made allegations against him.
Yes, that
and
is
also
true.
claiming that he saved people while he was in combat. That one of those people says, nope, never happened.
Yeah.
And that's a multiple level. And we've
Right.
heard that before with elected people. They make the claims of bravery, and then it comes back and bites them. And then the threats to reveal intimate images of the ex-girlfriend, almost
Yeah.
to the point of stalking her. So it's just
I think it was stalking. I mean, the judge, she went to the court to get a protective order, and the judge found Mills to be a complete liar.
I know.
Yes, that did not look good for him in the Columbia County Court when the judge basically said he rejected all of Mills' claims that it was all politically motivated, issued an injunction, and warned him specifically, don't have any contact with her, including online, because I'm not messing around here. You'll go to jail.
Yeah.
Of course, he continues to claim that, and the campaign violations and the stolen valor allegations, that is all politically motivated against him. We'll see.
Frank, I want to ask while I've got you here. I mean, I know both Mills and the other representative have said that they are innocent, that these are trumped up allegations. Mills has said he's going to work with this subcommittee. I mean, they're not our local representatives, but they are Florida representatives on the national stage. How does this reflect back on Florida, regardless of how this ends up panning out?
It doesn't look good for sure. I believe there's already backlash against Mills in his district, and he's going to face a challenger. I was not aware of the Southern Florida Congresswoman until her indictment came out, but you read the report there, and the money trail, as Randy pointed out, is pretty clear. She even claimed she made almost $6 million more than the previous year, and there was a house ethics investigation there. They said that her company, which I think was Trinity Healthcare, had refused to pay back almost $6 million in overcharges and refused. And then there was a lawsuit, and now we've got criminal cases. So unfortunately, we've seen this before. Remember Corrine Brown, how long that dragged out. And we seem to be heading for one criminal case against a Florida congressperson and maybe another. And what happened then in the House the other day, they wanted to censure, Nancy Mace wanted to censure Cory Mills, but it fell short of a couple of votes. And then there was a vote to censure the Democratic incumbent from the Virgin Islands in the Epstein case. And that fell short by a couple of votes. And then people were screaming quid pro quo. So it looked bad at that level as well.
Yeah, absolutely. It's messy. It's definitely messy, regardless of how it pans out. Well, look, I want to thank everybody for being here. Mike Mendenhall, Randy DeFoor, Frank Powers, Dan Scanlon. Great conversation. Interesting news this week. Thank you all for joining us.
thanks, Noah.
Thanks, Noah.
Up next.
Glad to be here or there.
Thank you for reporting in for
Thank you,
Mandarin, Frank. Next
All right.
up, from in front of the camera to behind it, a local screenwriter debuts her quirky holiday comedy.
Terrell Hogan Law.
I'm Wayne Hogan. Accidents can happen when you least expect it. For decades, our attorneys have dug out the facts to help juries decide who's at fault.
More at TerrellHoganLaw.com. The Fort Mose Jazz and Blues Series returns this February with 2 weekends of music featuring Gary Clark Jr., Ladisi, the Robert Cray Band, Don Was, Samara Joy, and more. Tickets and information available at DiscoverFortMose.com. WJCT Public Media is supported by the United Church UCC DOC and Quakers in St. Augustine, an open and affirming community rooted in social justice. More information at uccsa.org and staugustinequakers.org.
Loneliness can be as dangerous as smoking. How connection might be the best medicine. I'm Dr. Joe Servin. Join me tomorrow at 4 for What's Health Got to Do with It on WJCT News 89.9 Jacksonville.
On the next Florida Roundup, the Jeffrey Epstein case still casts a long shadow of unanswered questions and powerful connections. Survivors, including those in Florida, are still seeking justice. This week, we're joined by Congresswoman Lois Frankel, who represents the district where Epstein lived and operated. As new details emerge, what does accountability look like? Share your thoughts with us at radio@thefloridaroundup.org. I'm Danny Rivero. Join us Friday at noon.
The votes are in, the bill is signed, the full Epstein files are set for release. On the next Friday News Roundup, what we'll see and when we'll see it. Plus, a North Carolina immigration crackdown results in hundreds of arrests and a community in fear. And what to make of an economy where tech is soaring, but everyday consumers are struggling. We round up the news next time on 1A.
Today, starting at 10 on WJCT News 89.9.
Welcome back. Blended family dynamics, Christmas chaos, and a run-in with mobsters. A Ponte Vedra screenwriter's new film takes a holiday break from the season's traditional cinematic offerings. Here to tell us all about it is Erin Kiefer. She's the screenwriter of a new film called Dial It Back. Erin, thanks for being here.
Thanks so much for having me.
Look, I want to ask, just to start off, how did you land on kind of such a wacky storyline for this movie? Did your own experiences shape this at all? Maybe not the mobsters, but...
Yeah, absolutely. Everything I write definitely stems from some kind of personal experience or thought. And this one was particularly close to home because it was about, second marriage newlyweds. I was divorced. I'm now remarried. And how do you blend the stepkids, And so I was just always thinking, you'd be worried if they didn't like each other, but then what if they really liked each other? What do you do and what does that look like? And then I just kind of let my imagination go from there.
From a screenwriter's perspective, because I know you've got a good bit of experience writing award-winning screenplays, how do you balance really disparate topics, I suppose, of crime caper and comedy? How do you make that work?
That's a good question. Well, I wanted to make it either an action comedy or a crime comedy because it just makes it more interesting. And with streaming, it definitely lends more to the international audience if you can make it not just a comedy. So with the mobsters, I always just try to give everyone kind of a quirky trait, so they are also comedic.
It's kind of like Home Alone, and that's a classic.
Yeah, I was just gonna say. I would say this movie, if like the Home Alone movie and National Lampoon's Christmas Vacation had a baby, Dial It Back would be that baby.
And then that baby's parents got divorced and remarried.
Right,
Yeah.
and then it's the second marriage, yeah.
So since 2019, you've won over 200 awards and recognitions for screenplays you've written, but this is your first feature to be picked up on a major streaming service. It's on Amazon Prime. How are you feeling about that? I mean, what's the thought?
I'm really excited. I'm now realizing there's so much content. It's actually a full-time job just trying to market it and say, hey, I've got a movie out there. And before it was just trying to get the movie made. And now it's like, wow, okay, how do I get people interested in it? I'm hoping, over the holidays, people will watch it. It's a really easy, fun, kind of zany watch you can throw on. It's definitely different than the Hallmark movies. So I'm hoping it'll be like a little more of a, I don't know, something different.
And if you've exhausted all of the Hallmark movies too, then you've got something else to watch.
Yeah, exactly.
I know you've got some experience acting as well, as you graduated from school and you took classes in acting and writing. But I'm wondering a little bit, luck and timing. That's one thing you've said kind of factors into all of this. How do you feel about that? I mean, you've written a lot of screenplays, but this is your first major one.
Right.
How does all that work in this industry?
That's a good question. There's definitely not a linear path, and I think that's the hardest thing about trying to do anything creative is there's no A to B. Like, okay, I'm at A, how do I get to B?
Yeah.
And there's no real answer, and you just have to kind of try to do everything you can, and then at some point you kind of ask yourself, is this worth it? Am I happy? And I think that if you stick with it,
definitely luck and timing will play in, but if you stick with it, at some point things will come together, and you'll end up with a product that you're proud of, hopefully.
After Dial It Back, what's next for you in this world of showbiz?
Well, we actually just wrapped another production. It's called Love Me Times 3, and it's another comedy. It's not holiday based, but it's in post production, and I'm hoping it'll be out next year. So that's kind of the next focus.
That's really exciting. That's
Thank you
really
so
exciting.
much.
I mean, do you have any advice you would give to people who are really interested in trying to break into screenwriting, the showbiz world?
I would just say stick with it.
Mm-hmm.
I think that everyone has a story, and I think that there's so many platforms now and different ways to tell them. I started out thinking that acting would be my way to express my story or myself, and ended up writing.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that you need to be open to different mediums, because what you start out thinking is the best thing for you might be just a path to something even better.
Very cool. Well, Dial It Back is streaming on Amazon Prime Video and on Tubi.
Yes.
Erin Kiefer, and I want to thank you so much for joining us here
Thank you so
today.
much for having me.
Absolutely. That's our program. Thank you for listening. If you missed anything, you can find all of our past and current shows at firstcoastconnect.org. While you're there, you can sign up to get daily show news included and a breakdown of upcoming guests and topics delivered to your inbox every weekday. If you missed anything, catch our rebroadcast at 8 o'clock tonight. You can also find our entire archive on the FCC YouTube channel at WJCT.org and on your favorite podcast platform. And don't forget to listen Saturday at 4 when neurologist Dr. Joe Servin delves into the surprising ways isolation affects the brain and how the gratitude and connection can restore it. First Coast Connect is produced by Stacey Bennett. Our associate producer is Isabel Casapow. Our show is directed by Brady Corum, and our theme music is performed by Club de Belugas. Join us Monday when we talk to the local amusement park giant behind new dark rides for zoos and aquariums. I'm Noah Hertz, and you've been listening to First Coast Connect on WJCT News 89.9 in Jacksonville.
Support for First Coast Connect is provided by Baptist Health and the North Florida TPO.
The North Florida TPO is committed to shaping our transportation future. We're focused on planning, funding, clean fuels, and new technologies for a vibrant, connected community. Learn more at northfloridatpo.com. Baptist Health is a proud supporter of First Coast Connect. Baptist Health, committed to building a healthier community for all of us. More info at 202-4YOU or baptistjacks.com. The Fort Mose Jazz and Blues Series returns this February with 2 weekends of music featuring Gary Clark Jr., Ladisi, the Robert Cray Band, Don Was, Samara Joy, and more. Tickets and information available at discoverfortmose.com.